This summer, Lula and Connor, I think, were on a phone call, and they were commiserating about how bad things were in the industry. And apparently, one of them said, "Well, we got to think positive, so why don't we just get rid of PRRS?" So that's, as I recall, is that pretty close, Tim, to what happened? And so they really did stimulate us again, and to start thinking about this. And I think that Tim knew that Butch was in Washington D.C. at the time, and actually probably called him while he was in Washington, D.C., and he was pretty sure that Butch would be able to come home with a couple $100 million from USDA. Well, that didn't happen, I guess. So he called a meeting on July 9th in Ames, Iowa, to really look at some stakeholders, look at some people that have been involved in this process, to start thinking and brainstorming about what we could do. And obviously these things never happen as quickly as you hope they will, but if anything that's happened that's been certainly very positive from this process is it has gotten us on the course a little more as an organization to try to get some things defined a little better in terms of PRRS control. So some things that just some comments that came out of that meeting is let's turn something negative with our current financial situation into something positive, such as PRRS eradication. We certainly have space available. And we know that herd closure could reduce sow numbers, which might be a positive from a financial standpoint. As Paul pointed out, the cost of this disease to the industry, the change in the research results, the regional projects that are going on, and also coming out of that meeting, Jim McKean worked on a paper just kind of looking at the PRV program and trying to adapt some of the ideas from that to what we might see as a PRRS control program. I'd say we did kind of start out thinking about this in terms of the PRV program. I think we've come to realize it's quite a bit different. We've got a lot more cases of PRRS than we had of PRV. We're not likely going to get money from USDA or any substantial amount of money like the pseudorabies program. Interestingly enough, there's still funding for the pseudorabies program, a fairly substantial amount, still funding through USDA for that program. And then as a result of that meeting, we discussed about trying to draw in pork producers, and a group met with the Swine Health Committee. Paul sits on that committee, and as he indicated in his presentation, certainly they didn't run out of the room this time. A little more interest in this in PRRS control, and they definitely did ask National Pork Board staff to continue to stay abreast of that effort. I would say, at least from my talks with National Pork Board, that it wasn't like full steam ahead, but certainly it's something that I think is of interest, and Pork Board wants to stay involved in, and I'll discuss a little bit about bringing producers in to the picture a little more here in a little bit. And then, again, as a result of the discussion at Expo with PRRS Cap and Bob, had the terminology group meeting, and that's met a couple of times. And really, as you saw again in the paper by Daryl and Dale, a tremendous amount of work and really a big help in moving that discussion forward. Because as any of you know, if you get involved in these discussions, they can get pretty bogged down. And if we didn't have the background work that had been done by Dale and Daryl on that, we'd still be hashing that out today, I think. So I hope that you will take a chance to read that paper in more detail, and we'll be looking at that as a group here this morning with the PRRS task force also. And that paper, I said, also looked at the area stages, and I think this became a little bit of a PRRS Cap 2 ASV joint effort, really, in terms of this terminology group and the things that they have been working on and trying to move forward. So do we have a plan? I think that at least now, the other thing you're going to have to understand is some of this is my thoughts, because again, we haven't got this on paper as a group from ASV standpoint. It seems to me that veterinary leadership has driven this idea and will probably, at least here in the near term, continue to drive it. Obviously, several groups had been active in what was going on, particularly here recently. and it seemed a little bit helter-skelter, and so ASV board actually asked our group, the PRRS task force, to try to coordinate this effort, and that's one of the things that we'll be trying to work on this morning and into early afternoon. Hopefully we can get that distilled down a little bit and come up with some ideas, and we're certainly open for any of those of you that have ideas on how we might effectively move forward with this plan. Just a few general thoughts that, again, things that have been brought up, but these are the big areas that I think that we need to work on: communication, cooperation, collaboration, and coordination. So certainly we as ASV could get a website dedicated to, similar to what Laura had worked with, and I think that was an excellent idea, working with the educational effort, and then coordinating with state animal health officials. We have had some communication at U.S. Animal Health meeting. We certainly need to get cooperation between all parties, National Pork Board, PRRS CAP, ASV, whoever's working on this, is to try to get some cooperation and collaboration, which kind of goes together with industry, academia. OSHAB has been mentioned, certainly the PRRS effort at Minnesota, the task force, and of course regulatory. And then finally, just trying to get some standardization, and that's some of the effort that we've been at this summer, I think, is to try to get some standardization, so at least when people start these projects, we can try to be on the same page. Then hopefully as these things coalesce, it'll be easier. Again, I mentioned that these a couple of working groups that have accomplished some specific tasks, and I think we're going to need to continue to move forward with some groups like that, or when there's something that really needs to be done in terms of the effort. That may be a short-term task, but at least it looks like it can be an effective way to get some ideas and plans that are in agreement. The question might be, do we need some kind of overarching supervisory board similar to what they had in the National PRV Control Board? Again, that's something that's worth discussing. Do we need that? We have included producers, obviously some, and we should continue to do that. I think many people think that eventually producers are going to really have to take ownership of this at some point to really get the buy-in to get this program completely accomplished. And then the question of really who should be the lead organization and try to coordinate that. I think that's a possibility for ASV, but I don't know that we know that will be the fact at this point. So what about a timeline? I think that's one of the things that I have been thinking about, that here we are in 2010, and we would like to initiate at least some coordination. We've tried to start to do that. We'd like to establish some standards. We've started to do that. And then, again, who could be this lead group? So here we are, 2010. We've got a lot of questions on this timeline that I think we have to work to fill in. I don't have the answers for those, but that's part of the process and part of our goal, I think, at least from ASV's standpoint. When would that be? We've talked about it. It probably would not be bad to have some kind of a year in mind that we might be moving or a lot closer to PRRS free than we are today. So I put down 2020 because that's like clear vision, right? So it may not be that year, but we'll have to see. We know we've got these tools. Those have been mentioned. I'm not going to cover them, but a tremendous advancement in the tools to work with PRRS elimination. So a lot of positive things in terms of what has been done, and by a lot of different people. So that's great. So can we eliminate PRRS? I think, as has been pointed out today, and as we know, we've got the methods to clean up sites. Looks like this is not all showing up on the slide. Looks like location, again, as also pointed out on the risk assessment, how critical that is. I guess real estate business and PRRS elimination, that's pretty important. We're going to really need regional cooperation, and we're going to need sharing of information. Again, I think this is some of the things that we'll talk about today on how we can do that best, and I think we would all agree that we have lived with this virus long enough. My second son got married this summer, so I was I happened to find a marriage quote. It says, "How do you decide who to marry?" Because I thought, well, maybe PRRS, you know, if you really embrace this PRRS elimination, it's kind of like getting married. You have to really establish a relationship with the virus and decide you're gonna commit to doing something. Okay, so this was the quote from. They asked kids how you decide who you're going to marry, and this was a 10-year-old. What he said. He said, "You got to find somebody who likes sports. She should like it that you like sports, and she should keep the chips and dip coming." That's probably a recipe for disaster, isn't it? So I decided that I would change this to how you decide. How do you decide to embrace PRRS elimination?